Hello, everybody. Josh Neighbors here. Locked on Big 12 podcast. Today is the 29th of April, 2022. Happy Friday, everybody. Hope you guys are having a good weekend out there. Today's show, we're going to be discussing last night's NFL draft results, and no Big 12 players were taken in the first round of the draft. It's a big problem for multiple reasons. We'll get into all of those things on the show today, but pretty important topic, not one I take much joy in discussing, but one that has to be discussed, at least for the conference's future in the short term and the long term. That's coming up on today's show.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Once again, hello, everybody. Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at LO Big 12. You guys can follow me at Josh Neighbors _ Find the show wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. And the big story we're discussing today is the news that there were no Big 12 players selected in the first round of the 2022 NFL draft. And the other day, I did I had a video titled, "Will the Big 12 Still Be a Power 5 Conference Once Oklahoma and Texas Leave?" And if you all have listened to this show, you guys know I believe that the answer is yes. I think it's 100% yes. And, you guys heard me. I made some arguments about where the Big 12 currently sits in relation to the ACC and the Pac-12. Obviously, I think the Big 10 and the SEC are ahead, but I think there's a conversation to be had about, especially last season where the ACC was compared to the Big 12, where the Pac-12 was compared to the Big 12. I think there are some legitimate conversations that can be had about where everybody really sits and how close the Big 12 is, because I have heard the argument that, hey, maybe the Big 12 is closer to an AAC than it is to a ACC, which I find laughable. I don't find that to be true at all. But on the other side of this, this is an area where the Big 12 is going to have to improve to get themselves, more recognition for basically where the conference sits. Like, you need to have guys getting drafted in the first round. And for the problem is, for the Big 12, really the only schools that have been doing it as of late are Texas and Oklahoma. Now, Texas not putting offensive players into the NFL, the first round draft, but Oklahoma has really been carrying that mantle. And last night, you saw the American get a top 10 pick. You see conferences like what, the whatever the Missouri Valley football is for, it's 1AA, whatever the heck they're calling it now, with Trevor Penning out of Northern Iowa. You're seeing, the American got two players actually in the first round last night. The SoCon got a player in the first round last night. The Pac-12 had more players. The ACC had more players. The SEC, the American, all the Power 5 leagues except for the Big 12 were represented last night. And I actually had people texting me. I had people texting me, sending me stuff in relation to this. I'll read you guys one of the texts that I got earlier today from, sent in a group chat, about basically it's like, hey, laughing at the Big 12, talking about how, crazy it is, but 0 picks in the first round, a bunch of schools with long drafts or droughts, I should say, in the draft. And people notice, I stick up for this league as much as anybody, but it's definitely an opportunity for people to take a shot at this league when they're not putting first round level picks there. And, I think they have some first round talent. Like, you look at the bottom part of this NFL, the first round of the draft, and you see guys, like Lewis Seen and Daxton Hill go, and depending on your mileage, how you want to use those guys. I mean, if you're looking for a safety, I think Jalen Petrie is just as good as those guys. You see a guard like Cole Strange out of Chattanooga go. That's a guy that they thought would be available there for the, at 29. They would, you could have had him in the 50s, people were saying, but he goes there. And, I was also really surprised to see, we'll get to more observation generally, but Jermaine Johnson dropped as far as he did. So, there was really, I think the Big 12 is going to have a pretty good rest of the draft. I think day 2 is going to be a big day for the Big 12 conference, but the day 1 was just really rough. And as we move forward, the Big 12 has got to put more guys in positions to get drafted higher. And it's got to come from places like Oklahoma State. It's got to come from places like Baylor. It's got to come from places like TCU and, West Virginia. And by extension, UCF, BYU. Now, Cincinnati's putting guys in the first round. So I actually think, you talk about first round talent, like Zach Wilson just went in the first round, offensive lineman going from BYU as well in the previous season going pretty high. UCF can put players up there as well. And so, mentioned Cincinnati, Houston's in a good spot as well. Ed Oliver in recent memory is somebody who has gone pretty high. So they've got the ability of new teams coming in, but on the teams in the conference right now, they've got to do their part as well, because last year, we saw CeeDee Lamb get drafted. We saw now Jalen Reagor back in 2020, it's 2020 draft. I'm saying Jalen Reagor, one of those guys who's a first round talent, in my opinion, really just has not panned out. So, these guys have the ability to, these our league does. Jordan Brooks went in the first round to the Seahawks. Jeff Gladney went in the first round to the Seahawks, went in the first round to the Vikings. But it's more about doing it on a consistent basis, because you flip ahead, you go to 2021, and the Big 12 was not very well represented in the first round. And so for back-to-back years, there was nobody in the Big 12 last year that went in the first round. So for back-to-back years, the Big 12 has been shut out in the first round of the NFL draft. Something's got to change. Look, I'm not here proclaiming to know what the answer is. I think the talent development in this conference, especially at places like Oklahoma State and places like Baylor, is really good. But it's got to be consistently there. And there's been a lot of transition, with Joey McGuire at Texas Tech. There has been transition, at TCU with Sonny Dice coming in. Gary Patterson's well known for putting defensive players up there pretty high. But these new regimes got to get in there, and Baylor's obviously pretty new too. And then obviously you add the new teams. It's going to be on all of them. It's going to be all on all of them together, to keep putting a high level of talent. And really, if you're not recruiting at a high level in the Big 12, outside of OU and Texas, does not recruit at a super, super high level. Recruits at a pretty decent level, but their bread and butter is talent development. They got to get those guys all the way up, though, develop them into first-round type players. I think it'll come. I think it will happen. But just, it's something that back-to-back years, like it's a really bad look. And OU and Texas are going to be leaving the conference, and we're going to see some OU guys go today on day 2. Good to see. We'll talk about the first round level talents here in a second too. I think we're going to see Breece Hall and Jalen Petrie go today, but it's those guys are first round talents. The problem is we're not getting them to a spot where they're surefire first round picks, and the Big 12 does need more of those. All right, quick break and a quick word from our sponsor. Today's show is brought to you by Built Bar. Go to built.com today. It's built.com. Use promo code LOCK15, LOCKED15, LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com today. They got plenty of new flavors all the time popping up at built.com. Built bars, guys, have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which Built bars taste just as good as a candy bar, but they're better for you. Candy bars have around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Go to built.com today. You got flavors such as banana cream pie, raspberry, double chocolate, and so many more. Once again, built.com today. Built.com, promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off on your first order. All right. So let's look at last night's draft. What happened? What went down? The broadcast, fine. I was watching on ESPN. From what I saw, it was fine. I was really watching the latter part of the first round. A whole lot of Mike Greenberg, Granny, if some of you know him, complaining about how fast the picks were coming in. I thought it was really well paced. I actually thought this draft was really well paced. Now, they might have been a bit more prepared for the long breaks between guys. which is fine. It's what they're used to. But like, if you guys watched the end of the first round, Mike Greenberg continually was saying, well, the picks are coming fast and furious. Wow, the picks are coming fast and furious. Picks are coming fast and furious. Like, we get it. Just get ready for the pick. And I thought the pacing, especially towards the back end, was really good. I had no problem with it at all. Thought it was a bit, a really good speed, and so the back part especially was flying. I thought when I was checking picks earlier on too, things were going pretty well. So Trayvon Walker goes number one, and I think the big story coming out of that first round is the number of Georgia guys who end up going, number one. Let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think. Yeah, 5 guys from Georgia were taken in the first round, and none of them were Nakobe Dean. And that was a huge talking point, I think, across the board. Everybody was mentioning, oh, how do you not take this guy? How does this guy keep falling? And I mean, I'm with you right there. Like, I think when we watched last year, sure, Jordan Davis might have been the guy that I think most people stuck out just because he was great in that first game of the season against Clemson. He was such a recognizable player and force. And, a lot of the shows I was working at Sirius last year, a lot of guys saying, I'm Jordan Davis. Why is he not up there for Heisman? Why is he not being considered right there with everybody else? And then it kind of opened up the point of, well, who else in this defense? Nakobe Dean could definitely be in there too. Nakobe Dean just has the football player vibes. It's weird. I've never seen this much consensus on social media about a player, whether it's from, guys like Josh Pate, who are more like, I'm not as good, not claiming to be as good as Josh Pate. You saw a video today. He and I are not necessarily X's and O's inclined as some people are. I did not play football at a high level. I, did not play very much when I was younger. Obviously loved watching football. I've watched football, my entire life, but do not claim to be the X's and O's person in certain ways. You point out certain techniques to you guys, which guy lines up where, which coverage people are in. I kind of get that stuff, but, there are people who are far more equipped to talk about that stuff than I am. And then there are people, who are talking in the football community who you are saying, I can't believe this guy is available. Is it because of his arms, his arm length, is because of his hand size, because of his speed, because of his height. And this was, so there's certain players when I think about them when they play, and I know quarterback is not linebacker. I remember watching Deshaun Watson and watching him cook Alabama's defense twice. And I remember saying, like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, why are we not acknowledging that this guy probably should be taken around number one? Now, let's see, Deshaun Watson, his draft ended up being I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. So the 2017 NFL draft was Deshaun Watson's. I remember thinking, I was like, okay, if I had to pick a guy out of everybody in this draft at quarterback, like Deshaun Watson's the guy, because what is the closest thing we have in college to a, what's the closest thing in college that we have to an NFL defense? Well, it's Alabama, right? That's the closest thing that we have. So why would you not go with the guy who's cooked Alabama in 2 consecutive, national championship games, won one of them, onside kick from Saban, great call, wins the other one, but the offense was not the problem. I mean, he wasn't even the first player from Clemson taken. That distinguishment, that went to Mike Williams out of Clemson. Deshaun Watson goes at number 12, but before him taken is Patrick Mahomes and Mitchell Trubisky. Now, Patrick Mahomes has ended up being, a great player, but the whole point is here, Deshaun Watson's been awesome too. And off-field stuff aside, like, it was a no-brainer because basically everything was confirmed. Yeah, this guy can play at a super high level. Sure, he might not be Patrick Mahomes, but like he can put up, this guy's an MVP caliber quarterback. He's been on a bad team for a while, but like, this guy single-handedly won a playoff game. I watched it happen, I think it was against the Bills. He's an all-pro caliber player. And when he's playing and when, everything's going on, once again, all this stuff beside, like, it also seemed like a good dude too at the time, right? The Habitat for Humanity stuff, obviously, is really good. People loved him at Clemson, raved about the kind of leader that he was. And so that kind of stuff, it just made sense, right? Like, this guy has done great against the highest level, and he goes on to the league and does well. Nakobe Dean is that guy just at a different position, right? Nakobe Dean this year is a player that we all watch and is like, yeah, it's probably maybe not the most talented player. That's probably the best player on his defense. I mean, I'd be shocked if he doesn't go, in the first 3 picks of the second round, just after all the hand wringing that's been going on. And look, he might not, but like I'd still be shocked if that didn't happen this year. 72 tackles, 36 solo, 6 pass deflections, 6 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 2 picks, and one of them being one they took for a touchdown. So look through all this stuff, right? Good instincts. Guy can get in the backfield. Guy can force fumbles when he's got good ball skills. Guy can track a ball, good ball skills. The interceptions as well. 6 pass deflections. So we're talking about, maybe a lack of size, but still, this guy's getting hands on footballs and making things happen. So, and motor just, he was the guy that stuck out. Like, he was the guy that stuck out on a defense full of guys that stuck out. And it's crazy to me that he didn't go last night. I thought it was a missed opportunity, but hey, maybe people knew that they could have gotten him later on. The Buccaneers, they have a chance to draft him with the first pick, and I don't know if they necessarily need him. I'm trying to go check the Buccaneers depth chart right now, but like, this is a team that he's pretty set at linebacker, but still, like, why would you not just take an extra guy? Devin White, Levante David, and then Shaq Barrett. So he actually might be in Jamel Dean. So like this might be a situation where I might actually pass, but I don't think there's gonna be much passing down the line here. Tampa Bay, Minnesota, Tennessee, Minnesota and Tennessee. Definitely teams, in my opinion, that could use Nakobe Dean. The Giants could use him. Texans could use him. Jets could okay, he'll get drafted here pretty soon. I think that's pretty clear. All right, other stuff happening. So congratulations to Georgia. The 5th pick in the draft was done by a young man named Sam Prince. I've had the pleasure of being able to work with Sam Prince before. He is a Make-A-Wish kid. He had a heart transplant. I think he's doing okay now, doing well now. Everything's totally normal, but he had the opportunity. He's a massive Giants fan from New Jersey. He's into sports broadcasting, been able to work with him in sports broadcasting camps. Got to announce the pick. If you guys haven't watched this yet, go on Twitter, look up Sam Prince, and just, he nails the pick. The New York Football Giants. He nails Kayvon Thibodeau's name with the pronunciation as well, and then just dabs him up, gives him a big hug, and it was a great moment. It was a really cool moment. It was circulating around Twitter, so go check that out. I'm a Kayvon Thibodeau guy over Aiden Hutchinson. I think Aiden Hutchinson might be the kind of player that might not take plays off, and I think he fits with Dan Campbell a lot better than Thibodeau does. Kayvon Thibodeau is an alien. Kayvon Thibodeau is a game wrecker. Kayvon Thibodeau has the stuff that Myles Garrett and Chase Young have. Is it every single play? No. But when it's right, they make the plays that win you football games. They can single-handedly win games. Those kind of guys do. You might say, Josh, well, sometimes you don't even need those guys, i.e. Oregon against Ohio State last year. Sure, yeah. And there were some moments where his phone was out on the sideline sometimes, and he made those puzzling comments about Alabama that I did not endorse at all. But he, to me, is just a freak, and I think we talk ourselves out of him as the year went along. I think that was something that I noticed. But Hutchinson at 5, or 2, excuse me, Thibodeau at 5 to the Giants. And that brings me to the New York teams. I know we're not this is not a necessarily a NFL podcast normally, but hey, it's the draft. We all love it. Let's just talk about it some more. The Jets, really great night last night for the Jets. They take Ahmad Sauce Gardner, who is Big 12 adjacent, mind you. They take him with the 4th pick because Derek Stingley went 3rd. I will say Derek Stingley ended up going eventually where I thought he should have gone. He had, there's things going on with Derek Stingley, but still, I think if you look at, the limited film that we got of him, especially his freshman year, and that's super limited, but still limited later on. This guy is an incredible talent. He's just an incredible talent. And I think even missing time, he still ended up right where he should have been at 3rd. Sauce Gardner just kind of proven go now, in high level situations, that's where I like to evaluate guys. It's why I did not love Desmond Ritter's performance. Thought he looked nervous and nervy against Alabama. Go look at Sauce Gardner's performance against Alabama on lockdown. He was great. Now, a couple missed throws at times where he's out, but he was generally speaking awesome in coverage, I thought, in that game. So Sauce Gardner, great pick for the Jets there. Then at 10, they go and they get Garrett Wilson. So you get a wide receiver, you get a cornerback, and then they get lucky at 26. And Jermaine Johnson is available there, so they go and get him at 26, the defensive end. He's a wide 9 technique out of Florida State, and they get him, who is a Georgia guy and then goes to FSU. So I thought they had a really nice night. The Giants, hopefully this stuff does not mess up for them, but they get Kayvon Thibodeau at 5. They get Evan Neal at 7. So they get the defensive line taken care of. They get the offensive line taken care of. They're building something so when they eventually do get their quarterback, they're in good shape. They are trying to, you see what the Giants are trying to do. They're trying to build a foundation, not necessarily off a quarterback. They went with Daniel Jones, and that didn't work, in my opinion, because I don't think the infrastructure was there ready to go. All right, I don't think the infrastructure was there ready to go for him. And so now what they're doing, I guess, you could say, well, too little too late, but they're retroactively building that infrastructure. I know the Andrew Thomas thing didn't necessarily work out, for the best, but I will say this. I think they've done a pretty good job of building what looks like infrastructure. Now, they got Kadarius Toney last year, which was a really interesting pick. But I think they're doing a good job. That was a great night for the New York teams. Wide receiver runs. That's one thing we have to talk about last night. Big wide receiver run. It started at 8 with Drake London. And so I saw, I'm forgetting the name, but the guy who hosts Locked On Falcons. I thought Drake London was going to be receiver number 1. I kind of thought he should, just with the physical tools he possesses and what he does. I don't know if Atlanta's the right spot, though. I thought this team had more needs than going wide receiver. That was really interesting. After that, you had Garrett Wilson go next, then Chris Olave, then Jamison Williams, back to back to back, 10, 11, and 12. And then my Washington Commanders traded back and went and got Jahan Dotson at 16. We saw the wild trade where A.J. Brown was sent to the Philadelphia Eagles, and then the Titans went Treylon Burks at 18. I don't know if I necessarily love that. I don't know if I love that for the Titans, getting rid of a guy like A.J. Brown and going and getting a Treylon Burks. I'm kind of curious about what's going to happen with them with Tannehill at that quarterback spot for the future. I think it might be time for them to hit the reset button. I know they paid him a lot of money, but as soon as they can, maybe hit the reset on that. He's a solid player. He's a good player, but it just seems like that team is hitting their ceiling. You can only ride Derrick Henry so far. During the regular season, it feels like their strategy is ride Derrick Henry and then have Tannehill make enough throws to win you games. And it's worked somewhat in the playoffs for them also. But they just seem like they can't get over the hump. I'm not sure if trading your best wide receiver and A.J. Brown and then going and getting Treylon Burks is going to do you a ton of good. I know you might lose him and you wanted to get something for him. I'm not sure if that was the right move. Also, Hollywood Brown as well, I have to mention. He gets traded. Lamar Jackson was upset. He's going to Arizona now. Lamar Jackson was upset last night. I thought the Ravens had an awesome draft. I love Kyle Hamilton. You guys, I'm not sure if you guys have heard me on this podcast a while ago, but I've raved about him. I'm a huge Kyle Hamilton fan. And so I think they got a great player with Hamilton, and they get Tyler Linderbaum. Like, the Ravens just got better. They 110% got better. There's some teams who are taking some big swings, taking some risks, and there are teams where you can say, okay, did you get better? And so, I thought when the Chiefs got Trent McDuffie, I thought they got better. I thought when the Jacksonville Jaguars drafted Devin Lloyd, I'm like, okay, they got better with that pick. There's just guys later on in the draft, and I felt the same way. I feel the same way with Jalen Petrie and Breece Hall. This was one of those picks. They had 2 picks, Tyler Linderbaum and Kyle Hamilton. They just got better with both of those picks. All right, let's talk about some guys who might get drafted today from the Big 12. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by BetOnline and BetOnline.net. I'm actually currently holding a BetOnline ticket right now for Breece Hall to be drafted. I accidentally hit the over bets, so I have him over 37.5. Sad, do not want that to happen. Hoping it's under still, to the wrong bet there. But you guys can find everything y'all want at BetOnline and BetOnline.net. They've got F1, NASCAR, UFC, boxing, Bellator, all those kinds of things you guys can find at BetOnline and betonline.net today. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. All right, so opportunities for Big 12 guys to go here in rounds 2 and in round 3. We're looking at guys like Jalen Petrie. We're looking at guys like Perion Winfrey and Nick Bonito. We're looking at guys like Breece Hall, who could be drafted. Those are the big 4, I think, at this point in time that we're looking at. And I think we're definitely going to see them go today in round 2. Maybe Nick Bonito slides, but I think we're going to see Jalen Petrie go. We're going to see Breece Hall go. Those are the 2 guys that, to me, were first round talents. And then also, there might be some baggage for the 2 OU guys that might keep them, away. I'm not sure those guys are first round talents, but I do think Petrie and Hall are first round talents. Hopefully we see that go in the second round. Hopefully we see them go pretty quick in round number 2. All right, that will do it for today's show. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at @JoshNeighbors_. You guys can find the show at LO Big 12. And then you guys also can find us wherever you guys get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Till next time, my friends, as always, stay safe.